This is a Rough Tiger production.
And you, and you, and you, and you were there. Some of it wasn't very nice, but most of it was beautiful.
What were you just humming?
Sunshine of Your Love. I remember once I told Daniel, I said, when he was learning how to play recorder in the second grade, I said, you should learn how to play this song on recorder. And oh, darn, one day he came in and said, how's this? Welcome
Better
to
than
Dream Idiots.
chopsticks. Yeah.
That's it.
Welcome
Yes.
back, folks.
This is Dream Idiots. I'm Morris, and the fellow across the way is Bryan. Each week we tell each other stories and drag you along for the ride. Bryan, how are you?
Good. It's already 1,000 degrees in Central Texas.
Well,
God
as that
bless
great
Texas.
as that great philosopher once said, ha ha. Uh, it is nice and warm here, but not too warm. So
Yes,
here are the
Texas is
Great
too close
Plains
to the
of
sun.
Colorado.
Yeah. Thanks for
We have.
listening, folks. Go ahead. You
I was
first.
just, I was going to say we have no updates this week, but Bryan probably has information about where you can find our stuff.
No updates this week. If you're listening to us now, please, if you don't mind, give us 5 stars on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Podchaser or Amazon or I'm not, wherever you're listening to us. Not Amazon. I meant I meant Audible. You can check us out on dreamidiots.com. Drop us a line if you want. Our email address is dreamidiotspodcast@gmail. And we're on Facebook and Instagram at Dream Idiots. And thanks for tagging along.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for tagging along. And it is episode 116, which means I get to go first. Bryan, I've been saving this fella for a while for you.
Uh-oh.
Here's someone you're going to hate on really a lot of levels.
Okay, good.
I want to tell you about Malcolm Willis McConaughey.
Malcolm Willis McConaughey, like Matthew McConaughey?
No,
Same spelling?
McConaughey as in
McConaughey,
McConaughey. McConaughey is I think you would
Okay.
say that.
Okay.
He was born in Minnesota, September 20th, 1946. His childhood years seem to have been unremarkable, but he made up for that very quickly by young adulthood. He was removed from his role as assistant scoutmaster in Boy Scout troop in Minneapolis. Can you guess why?
I'd rather not.
Because he molested several boys under his
Okay.
care.
Okay.
Now, as a former adult leader in scouting, I was a Cub master for Cub Scouts, and then I was an adult leader in a scout troop that my sons were in. I can assure you that the safety protocols today are far better than they were in the mid 1960s. You have to pass certain background checks. In fact, quite a few of them, one every year, and you have to take certain seminars and testings and so forth. And they have certain rules, like you can't be alone with a scout. That's not your scout, not your son or daughter in this case these days. There have to be 2 adults in every room where there's a scout, that kind of thing. That you can't get away with what he did, and it does not excuse the long period in which scouting did allow predators like McConaughey access to young boys and teens. He was arrested in 1965 for involvement with a 16-year-old and for circulating pornographic material in Wisconsin.
Lord.
And in 1966, he tried to apply for a position as a college reserve scouter. I'm not quite sure what that is, but there is a form of scouting called venture scouting that allows you to stay in scouting until you're about 21, where you do some really interesting stuff all around the world in scouting with kayaking and much more involved
Right.
outdoor activities. That was in Milwaukee, but by that time, the scouting authorities were on to his activities that he was up to in Minnesota the years prior, and they completely rejected him. He was also convicted for check fraud perpetrated on no less than 10 different banks in the amount of $57,000. He served federal time in the United States for mail fraud. And showing that he's a man of the world, something that would come in handy later in his life, he served prison time in London for forgery. So
Man of the world.
we're up to the early 70s, and he's done all kinds of stuff, some more horrible than others. Obviously, the pedophilia and molestation the worst of it, but he's also starting to get into financial crime. Upon his return to the States after his stay in England, he set about faking his own death. Malcolm Willis McConaughey allegedly died in a Minneapolis traffic accident in 1977. McConaughey wrote his own obituary and sent it to a New Jersey newspaper, the envelope postmarked from Vermont. So he's trying to establish a backstory of his own death. He started using a new identity here, Bryan. Now, if we've already kicked him really hard in the stomach and knocked him to the ground for being a pedophile, this is the point where you're going to reach down and punch him in the throat. His new identity, his new name is Adam Aristotle.
Okay.
Adam Aristotle Starchild.
Oy.
Oy, indeed. He claimed the Starchild moniker was a Plains Cree Indian name of Western Canada, which was okay for him to use because he claimed Native ancestry. He also claimed to be the former chair of the Confederation of American Indians. That's an organization I could find nothing about. It may very well be a real organization, but as some folks who study this kind of social phenomena, he may be what some natives and indigenous people call a pretendian. That he's taking something that's not his.
Right.
So with his bona fides established, let's take a brief interlude to discuss something even worse than this: the horrific nature of being a teenager in Michigan in the 1970s. Okay. And we will come back to Mr. Starchild here in a moment. As outlined in a few books that I will discuss at the end of the story, and in Nina Instead's excellent podcast, Don't Talk to Strangers, a series of events on the outskirts of Detroit and other locales took place that are still remembered as dark chapters in Michigan history. The first are a series of so-called babysitter murders, where 3 teen girls were killed in 3 seemingly unrelated acts. Between January 1st and January 20th of 1976, so a span of just 20 days, 16-year-old Judy Farrow, 16-year-old Cynthia Cadjo, and 14-year-old Sheila Schrock were strangled, bludgeoned, and shot to death, respectively. All 3 cases were eventually solved, and some or all of their murderers were brought to justice. One of them killed himself before he was brought in. Another one was died before they could get him into prison. But the remainders, because there were multiple offenders in a couple of the cases, they did serve time. So they did solve these crimes. But for a while there, they weren't sure if they were related or not. And that's enough to send you into a panic, right? That, oh my God, teenage girls are disappearing.
Right.
Some of these were thought to be runaways. They were not runaways. These were innocent victims of basically creeps, horrible, horrible men doing horrible things. Then at the beginning of February 1976, 4 children would go missing over the next 13 months. Their bodies would be found days after their individual abductions in what would be called the Oakland County Child Killer Case. 12-year-old Mark Stebbins, 12-year-old Jill Robinson, 10-year-old Kristen Mihalik, and 11-year-old Tim King are the 4 confirmed victims. There are 7 other possible suspected cases ranging from 1969 to 1979, but these are 4 confirmed cases that are all part of the same chain.
Okay.
These 4 children,
and they're part of the same chain because they had similar
MOs, similar presentation of the bodies.
Okay.
Similar style of disappearance, that they would be gone for X number of days and then the bodies would show up. Okay. Initially, there were some people would say, well, the bodies were laid out respectively. They weren't. And I'll talk about some of the authors that talk about this. It's one of the worst cases of children serial murder in the U.S. And again, Nina Instead's podcast, Don't Talk to Strangers, is a good place to start if you want to know more about this case. Now, finally, there's the horrible case of North Fox Island, a 2-mile wide, 1-mile long island in Lake Michigan, one of 2 of the Fox Islands. North Fox is the smaller of the 2. It was owned by a man named Francis Sheldon in the 1970s. The island was used as a summer camp for underprivileged boys from the Detroit area.
Okay.
Is this you're looking at me askance, which you should.
No, it's not ringing a bell, though.
Sheldon, along with a couple of conspirators named Dyer Grossman and Gerald Richards, had created a fraudulent charity organization ostensibly to lend credibility to the summer camp. It was called Brother Paul's Children's Mission. Boys were flown to the island in Sheldon's private plane, where once at the island, they were sexually abused and used in a child sex ring. It was a horrible, horrible case. Sheldon fled the country for Europe in 1976 and was reported dead in 1996. The other two gentlemen did eventually go to jail, which is a good thing. Sheldon, however, got away. As the years have passed, there seems to be some evidence, some connections that the same horrible people involved in the North Fox case may have been overlapped into the Oakland County child killer case. It's a disgusting web of abuse, murder, and depravity. It's really an incredible story. It's hard to get through, but there have been a few really good books written about this, and I'm inclined to think, after kind of absorbing all of it, that there is some relation to these cases. I mention it here because one of the financial advisors to Sheldon was none other than Adam Aristotle Starchild. Sheldon had handed over, yes, Sheldon had handed over $2 million in securities to Starchild, which were to be parked in an offshore trust, with Starchild as the trustee. This was probably a mistake on Sheldon's part because Starchild mishandled the paperwork and almost got away with keeping the money, in my opinion. But somehow, despite being on the run internationally, Sheldon was able to revoke the trusteeship of Starchild and get someone else in charge, and he was able to keep his money. Unfortunately, it's the kind of thing where there's nobody good to root for in that situation. But Bryan, this isn't the end of Starchild's shitty career in helping shitty people try to get away with doing shitty things. Do you remember Abscam in the late 1970s and early 80s? Do you remember Abscam? That gets lost in the shuffle of.
I remember the word. I couldn't tell you what it was about, though.
Yeah, I had to refresh my memory too. It was an FBI operation that started off as an investigation which uncovered an incredible amount of corruption in federal, state, and city governments. Originally, it was about trafficking. And the Abscam, a lot of folks said that it stood for Arab scam because it was in connection with some Arab actors. And then they said, no, it stood for Abdul, which was our code name for it. It got really nasty. But it went by the name Abscam. By the time it was over, what turned into a case about corruption and bribery. 7 U.S. House of Representatives, 1 U.S. Senator, 1 New Jersey State Senator, members of the Philadelphia City Council, the mayor of Camden, New Jersey, and an INS official were convicted of various bribery and corruption charges. That's quite the slate, running the gamut from federal to local.
Right, sure.
A lot of folks were convicted.
Well done.
Well, one of these jerks was U.S. Representative Richard Kelly of Florida, whose campaign mailing list had been handled by a small company out of St. Petersburg, Florida, called Minerva Consulting Group Incorporated. The proprietor of said company, referred to by author J. Reuben Appelman as, quote, an international bilking front, was Adam Aristotle Starchild. In between whatever stints of prison he spent, say in fraud in 1986, Starchild lived a life as what has been called a perpetual traveler, a life designed to lessen taxes and civic responsibility by simply moving from country to country. It's known that he lived in Panama, the Dominican Republic, Spain, among other places. Okay, so he's on the move. He's not paying taxes. He claims to be a libertarian. He also claimed membership in many organizations. Here's some. Mensa.
Oh, good.
The Libertarian Futurist Society. The International Society for Individual Liberty. The National Space Society, which actually sounds kind of cool. The Extropy Institute, which does not sound cool. It sounds scary. The Heinlein Society, which is about the works of Robert Heinlein. The World Future Society, which is kind of cool. Neil deGrasse Tyson is a member of that. It's about scientists and futurism. The Lighter Than Air Society, which is all about blimps. And the Hong Kong Chamber of Commerce. The blossoming of his career as a tax expert and consultant led to Starchild writing many books and articles about tax loopholes and investment strategies. He sometimes wrote about other subjects. Bryan, I'm going to read you a list of I've got a rather lengthy list of the books that he's written. See if you can pick out the ones that don't have to do with taxes or evading taxes or loopholes. You ready?
The ones that don't have to do with it?
Yes. Okay. From 1975, Tax Havens, What They Are and How They Work. Here's two titles from 1979. Tax Havens, What They Are and What They Can Do for the Shrewd Investor. Tax Havens for Corporations. From 1980, The Everyman's Guide to Tax Havens. From 1986, Rape is Punishment.
That one.
That one. He wrote that while he was in prison. He won third place in a prison essay contest.
Huh.
And that is a true story. That's the only fake one in here, by the way. The rest of them are all from 1993. How to Legally Hide Your Money in Switzerland, Second Passports and Dual Nationality, Swiss Money Strategies, The Tax Haven Report, How to Internationalize Your Capital for Protection and Profit. Fortress Switzerland, the global gateway to your offshore nest egg. Tax Havens for International Businesses, that's from 1994. Using Offshore Havens for Privacy and Profits. Using Switzerland for Asset Protection. Then from these last three are from 1995. How to Legally Obtain a Second Citizenship and Passport and Why You Would Want to. Keep What You Own. Protect your money, property, and family from courts, creditors, and the IRS. And finally, my favorite title by far of this list, Tax Havens for Canadians. Ingenious ways to preserve your wealth, and then in parenthesis, and have fun doing it. Starchild died September 20th, 2006, in Spain of complications owing to a brain tumor.
Oh, good.
But wait. His company, the Minerva Consulting Group, listed him as president and one Javier Castano as vice president. Castano is listed, according to J. Reuben Appelman, as still with the company. Yet Appelman has uncovered sources which put Castano's death 3 years before Starchild's. Appelman also notes Starchild's prior use of, quote, Javier Castano as an alias. Starchild will be nearly 80 if he has yet again faked his own death. His own death, which was on September 20th, the original day of Malcolm Willis McConaughey's birth in 1946. The sort of symbolism he would no doubt employ. On behalf of children everywhere, I sincerely hope he's dead.
Yeah.
He was a child molester and all-around asshole. And that is a brief look into the crimes of
a dirtbag,
a horrible human being named Adam Aristotle Starchild. Sources for this story were Don't Talk to Strangers podcast, hosted by Nina Enstead. She's got another regular podcast called Already Gone. If you're into true crime, I recommend both of those. But Don't Talk to Strangers with a miniseries she specifically did about the Oakland County child killer. True Crime Garage podcast has a couple episodes that are very succinct about getting to the basics on the Oakland County child killer with Nick and the Captain. Wikipedia for basic info, mainly book titles and information on Abscam, because I totally blanked on what that was about. It was so long ago, and I was like 8 when it happened. So, and then 2 books, which were great. J. Reuben Appelman's 2018 book, The Kill Jar, Obsession, Descent, and a Hunt for Detroit's Most Notorious Serial Killer from Gallery Books, New York. And then Marnie Rich Keenan's 2020 book, The Snow Murders, Inside the Oakland County Child Killer Investigation from Exposit Press in Jefferson, North Carolina. This guy's been on my mind since I first heard his name in one of the podcasts, and I was like, that cannot be a real name. And I looked it up, and I didn't provide you with the visual of him, but the way my son and I described is that he looks as though Mr. Toad from Wind in the Willows has been turned into a human and then smacked a couple times in the face with an ugly stick. Not to pick on someone's looks, but he is your textbook. I mean, if you lined him up and said, hey, point to the, yeah.
We'll have to find that image and use it for this episode because
Oh,
that
please
sound
don't. Please don't. Because
don't okay.
yeah, I
It's
wouldn't.
that disturbing. Okay.
No, I just don't want to give
Well,
this guy any more. I felt bad doing a story on the guy, but the story is just so outrageous about just this pedophile, tax fraud, mail fraud, forger, tax cheat. I mean, clearly a
right.
guy,
Just right.
just a,
Absolute scumbag, right?
yeah, just an asshole, all around asshole in a variety of ways of life, and a creep and someone who should have spent his life in jail.
Right.
Anyway,
Right. Yeah, very well, I almost said very cool. Certainly interesting. I hope he is dead.
oh, me too. Yeah, yep.
Awful. Yeah, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. I
Ish,
think.
maybe, right? We're planting seeds, right?
It's time for the Dream Idiot's curse word of the week.
Okay. So, my question for you, ever heard of a Dorset Henley?
A Dorset Henley.
Mhm.
Well, Henley's a type of shirt, right?
Mhm.
And Dorset is a place in England. It's a
Mhm.
county. That's all I can get out of it. Is
Okay,
that a
well,
name for is it a straight jacket?
that's actually a great guess. No, not quite, but I will explain. So
Okay.
I'll set the stage for you. So probably a decade ago, I was in a dog park in Austin, Texas. It's a little cool place up on Burnett Road, and it's a privately owned dog park. They actually have a little snack bar, and you can get a beer and a munch while your dog runs around outside. Very very cool place. Um, I was there with my pit bull mix Bodie, and happened to notice a woman who was there very obviously with her dog, who's very obviously a pit bull. She was sitting nearby, and I asked her what her pit bull's name was because our dogs were playing together. And she said, "Oh no, he's not a pit bull. He's a Dorset Henley." I started to laugh because he was, unmistakable. He was very clearly a pit bull. And only then did she realize that Bodhi was my dog and sort of the jig was up, right? So, side note, there are a ton of misconceptions about bully breeds and dogs that are called pit bulls. So, if fear of these dogs is maybe not completely absurd, but mostly absurd. And even the term pit bull has gotten so watered down that it doesn't really have any meaning anymore. Just as you can have a person who is Irish, or you can have an Irish setter, that's something that's very specific. But saying pitty or staffy or pit bull, it's a little like saying Asian or Latinx with regard to people, and then trying to behave as though you're saying something that's specific. It's not. If you're a pit bull person and someone asks you what kind of dog you have, I mean, you might as well say, well, he's not a cat or he's not an alligator. I mean, that's only slightly more vague. Um, so what are the dogs that are on this aggrieved list of the so-called bully breeds? So basically, it's the American Pit Bull Terrier, the American Bulldog, the Staffordshire Bull Terrier, the Bull Mastiff, the Boxer, the Bull Terrier, and the Boston Terrier, the Cane Corso, the Great Dane, the English Mastiff, and the Rottweiler, the Pug, and the Old English Bulldog. And sometimes German Shepherds and Dobermans get added in there. So just try renting a property pretty much anywhere in the country, especially in Texas, and you'll be laughed out of the building. So this random woman I met, she was a pit bull lady. She did volunteer work with a pit bull rescue group, and one of the things that they did was help people find housing. And one of their clever tactics was coming up with different names for the breed of their dog. It was always done a little bit with tongue in cheek, but I do think people actually do this. So if you're considering adopting one of these dogs, maybe you should consider this as well. Just try picking a geographical location that is somewhat more obscure. Don't say Austin or Dallas or Denver, and then combine that location with an item of clothing and using that as the breed of your dog. Hence the famed Dorset Henley, known for its bravery and loyalty. Unless you're landlord actually saw a picture of your pet, how would they know, right? Ask your pet to put down that name on, you adopt the dog. The vet says, what kind of dog, is he or she? Oh, he's a Dorset
Pilotus
Henley.
Jodhpur.
Right. So, in your case, in Colorado, you could say, well, heavens to Betsy, no, she's not a Great Dane. She's a Centennial Raglan Cravat. I'm headed out to the Big Bend area, hopefully later on, this summer to visit Balmorhea State Park. Is there such a dog as the Balmorhea Woolly Bowler? Well, there is now. Uh, um, you grew up in the Windcrest area in San Antonio. So is that your boxer? No, he's not a
Windcrest
boxer.
Tam O'Shanter.
I was going with the Windcrest tartan jumper. All of these sound like dogs. And I live in the Terrell Heights neighborhood in San Antonio. And I'm always impressed with the number of Terrell Heights muslin skirts that are walking around this neighborhood all the time. Just, you have to, if you adopt one of these names, you kind of have to say it quickly, and if you say it quickly, people won't question it. So anyway, just
those skirts,
funny
they'll
name.
tree a bobcat.
Exactly right. Yeah, they're fierce. They're great protection. So anyway, just a little game you can play if you so choose.
What'd you take out with you when you were ringtail hunting last week? Your blue lacy or your skort?
Squirts are better for dove. Everyone knows that.
For those of you who aren't Texans, blue lacy is a breed that is, I believe it's the Texas state breed, but it's not recognized by the AKC. It looks similar to a Weimaraner, but smaller and
Oh,
yeah.
And it's gray, or is it like a Vizsla and it's brown, or is it?
It's bluish gray, kind of steel gray. Yeah.
Okay. I've never heard that.
The blue lacy. That's awesome, Brian. I'd never heard of Dorset Henley.
Dorset Henley. So it's possible she was completely yanking my chain, but she was behaving as though they were actively advocating for this, and so people don't put Pitbull down, and then they're just completely fucked when it comes time to looking for a new place to live. So it may have been a gag, but it's a good gag.
I had horrible thoughts of it being a Dorset Henley. It's a Henley shirt with an extra long tail in case you run out of toilet paper. I didn't know what it was. Didn't know what was coming.
All right, so on with at least a little bit more talk of dogs. There's a province in Canada that is also the name of a big black puffy dog, black and white dog. And what is that breed of dog called?
Well, there's the Newfoundland and Labrador.
Yeah, so Newfoundland was the one I was looking for. So this is a bit of a shorter story, but definitely one worth sharing. Most folks in the 21st century, and for most of the 20th century, would pronounce Newfoundland just as you did, with the emphasis on the first syllable, and the second and third syllables are said almost as a mumble. Maybe it's like a crime to say them out loud. You have to sort of swallow the found and the lund. So that pronunciation is pretty much accepted as correct now, but it has definitely evolved over time. There was a time when natives, anyway, insisted that, 100 years ago or more, insisted that all three syllables sort of had equal emphasis. They were from Newfoundland, and some of them also don't like land pronounced L-U-N-D. It's Newfoundland, right? And because people can choose to be ridiculous and picky and pedantic over all kinds of things. Reminds me of being I was in a bar one time, probably in 2003 or 2004, with a bunch of drunks watching the Red Sox and Yankees play, and a buddy of mine and a random drunk stranger got into a heated argument over whose fans were more obnoxious, Red Sox fans or Yankees fans. It's like,
the answer's yes.
Yeah, right. It's just, who cares? This is like Exhibit A and Exhibit B of the very argument you are making. Just sit down and shut up. So really, incredibly stupid. Anyway, with that in mind, we're going to your neck of the woods, Castle Rock, Colorado. What?
20 my goodness.
20 or 30 miles south of you.
Between here and Colorado Springs. Yeah.
Yep. And couple of guys are there in March of 1876. William Atchison and John Peter Davis are working at the Hawker and Gray's sawmill in Castle Rock, Colorado.
Okay.
And a woman, Atchison, has a large dog, and landlady there asks what the breed is. And the, you know, John Peter Davis, Davis and Atchison just apparently just didn't get on. And Atchison was sort of known for correcting people's grammar and their spelling and pronunciation of things. Atchison was 22. He'd been born in New York City and, quote, enjoyed the advantages of a liberal education. The Denver Tribune noted later, quote, he was rather enthusiastic in his defense of the king's English, and this brought him into frequent and lively disputes with some of the other men. Atchison told the landlady that it was a Newfoundland dog. Davis, who was 35 or 36, just took exception to this, to Newfoundland, and said, oh, no, it's a Newfoundland dog, with emphasis on the last syllable. Atchison, of course, disagreed. This exchange becomes heated, and this is just every day with them. And they were, constant arguments over crap like this. So to find out who was right, they decided, okay, we're gonna go look it up. And they go over to walk over to Atchison's cabin to grab Webster's dictionary. Well, guess what? In 1876, Webster's dictionary is probably not a very complete compendium of geographical locations all over the world. So Webster's dictionary doesn't really answer the question, apparently. And so they're not satisfied, and things become heated, and the words are exchanged, and insults, etc. Atchison rears back and punches Davis, knocks him to the floor. Davis gets back up to his feet, and as one account later said, true to his Texan breeding and education, pulled out a gun and shoots. Atchison is struck in the stomach, but Atchison does not go down. He keeps fighting, hits Davis again, knocks him down. Davis gets up. Atchison knocks him down now even a third time. When shots are heard, or at least the one shot is heard, everyone else in the camp comes running like, what the fuck, guys? They get there, they find Atchison mortally wounded. They pick him up and and carry him to a bed. They summon a doctor, but this wound is fatal. Before he dies, though, Atchison recounts the exchange, and he is sort of bragging and at least a little bit triumphant, because he's pleased with himself that he was able to knock Davis down twice more after he'd been shot. But nevertheless, Atchison dies at some point in the morning. During the course of the night, it's Davis is it's clear that he is in deep shit, and local sheriff forms a posse, but they realize Davis has slipped away during the night, and don't know where he's gone. This is just after the Civil War. This is the Wild Wild West. So the idea of capturing this guy and prosecuting him, the odds of this happening are nil, right? The papers all over the country, especially in the West, just love this story and are mocking it, doing all kinds of things, putting in tongue-in-cheek, funny takes on headlines about the story. At least one paper in Montana tries to say that Davis had acted properly in shooting Atchison because correct pronunciation must and shall be preserved at all times. And it's just sort of mocked as the ridiculous story that it is. So the question remains, who had actually pronounced Newfoundland correctly, had the correct pronunciation in 1876. It turns out that if you look that up, and and had a good source for it, natives, locals to Newfoundland, then would have had the equal emphasis on all three syllables. But outside of people that lived in the area, both of those pronunciations were used. There were folks that said Newfoundland and other folks that said Newfoundland. So technically they were both correct. But again, today it's still the Newfoundland pronunciation is still quote unquote correct. But Davis makes his escape. Atchison is dead, is buried, and you'd think that would be the end of the story. We flash forward a number of years, all the way to 1910. John Peter Davis has made his way to Peoria, Oregon. He's now 70 years old, very, very ill, on his deathbed, or at least he thinks he is, and he wants to make a confession before he dies. His doctor is called. He confesses to the doctor that, 36 years ago, I killed a man over the pronunciation of the word Newfoundland. killed this guy, and he wants to basically come clean. Dr. Graham sends a letter back to Castle Rock. I have no idea how long this would have taken in 1876 or 1910. I would imagine quite a while. It's well over 1,000 miles. He sends a letter to Sheriff Anderson of Douglas County about the confession. And everyone has mostly forgotten about the shooting. Some folks kind of recall the details a little bit, only because it was so completely ridiculous. The DA at the time announces that he would attempt to bring Davis back to Colorado to stand trial if he actually recovers. But it's quickly, it becomes clear that, at this time, Castle Rock is way less than 1,000 people. And the sheriff starts digging around to figure out what evidence they might have, who they might use as witnesses. There are some old timers who kind of remember the event, because and mostly recall it because of the ridiculous sort of trivial nature of it. There's a guy named Simmons who may or may not have witnessed the shooting, but no one knows where he is or if he's still alive. The doctor that had examined Atchison before Atchison died was himself dead. And so there's nothing to really hang your hat on in terms of actually pursuing this case. And at some point during the intervening years, the courthouse had burned to the ground and destroyed a whole bunch of records as well. So there's no corroborative evidence here to make this prosecution go at all. Basically, all Davis would have to do would be recant and say, it was a fever dream, I made it up, who knows what, because there's no way he's going to get prosecuted for this. But he doesn't know that, at least not initially, right? So he's on his deathbed, and in a final twist of fate that kind of winds up working against Davis's favor, is he gets better. His health rebounds. His health rebounds, and the AP actually reported, quote, "It is understood that Davis is now better and regrets having made a full confession." And so even though it's clear that this case cannot proceed, there is no record of his extradition to Colorado. There's no record that there was ever a trial, but this is way over 100 years ago. But it does seem clear that the moment he was well again, Davis was off on the run again, and there's no record of him ever again. Newfoundland. And main source for this is a website called crimereads.com, but there are blurbs on this on several other sort of history websites as well. So a really trivial, stupid dispute.
And the whole time he's like, what was this place you said? Newfound? Allen?
What? Who?
And the only thing that came out of it was the manager down there was when he witnessed it, his last name was Chebawamba, and he said he got knocked down, but he got up again. You're never going to get him down.
All right, that's it, folks. We're done.
And years later, his great grandson found those lyrics, and the rest is history. That is some weird shit, Brian. I've never heard that. I've lived here for 8 years, and I've never heard that story.
The fight. There's one. When I was kind of digging into the story, there was one other, I think, reporter at some point indicated that he had a teacher when he was in middle school that actually like physically assaulted him because he mispronounced Newfoundland. I'm like, everyone just calm down. Like, serious, like a teacher beat you up because you mispronounced a word. Okay, that's bizarre. So, and there are other funny stories. They're even shorter than that about other ridiculous disputes like that.
Well, all right. That's the strangest one I've ever heard. How do you say it?
Well, the correct pronunciation is Newfoundland.
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 Is that how I said it at
Yeah,
the beginning?
more or less, right? Yeah. Huh?
Okay. All right.
All right, there you go, folks. That's it. That's all we got for this week. Thanks for listening to us. Give us 5 stars. Give us a review if you don't mind on whichever platform you're on. Drop us a line at dreamidiots.podcast at Gmail, Facebook, and Instagram. We're at Dream Idiots. And check out dreamidiots.com. We got some merch on there and some other cool stuff. And I here before too long, we're going to start having some guests on to chat about various topics. But we haven't figured out when that's going to happen. But we have some cool stuff coming.
Our guest geniuses. One of the things that people ask us is who are the idiots exactly in the Dream Idiots? And I think it's pretty clear that we had 3 of them in this tonight with the folks in these stories. Oh boy. All right. Go out and pet your Dorset Henleys and everybody have a good night. Be good to each other. We'll see you next time.
This is a Rough Tiger production.
Bong bong, Bryan.
Bong bong?
Bong bong.
Bong bong. Good.